Hello guys, and today we're going to be looking at the tutorial series that's happening on the Raspberry Pi. This is the Raspberry Pi Model 4 4GB model, and in this tutorial series, in this video, we're going to be talking about what we're going to be learning in the tutorial series, and what you'll be learning. Well, not quite me, I've already learned it. What you guys will be learning, and what you'll need, and basically the information about this tutorial series. So that's all this first video is about. Getting started, we are going to be going through the Raspberry Pi GPIO Zero forms, one page at a time. I'll walk you through it, teach you everything, explain everything in detail. We're also going to be learning about the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi. We're going to be learning about kits, breadboards, everything you use with the Raspberry Pi GPIO pins, things you can build, robotics, engineering, whatever you want to use the GPIO pins for. You're going to learn how to do inputs and outputs on them, how to I2C to the Arduino, and all that good stuff. You also learn how to use Thony IDE. Thony IDE is the built-in Raspbian Python IDE, and it is what we are going to be using to program this Thony Python IDE. On Raspbian Full, you are going to need Raspbian Full installed on your Raspberry Pi. You are also going to need a Raspberry Pi. You're going to need, but that's pretty obvious. You're going to need Raspbian Full to go through this tutorial. You're going to need a web browser open so you can search the GPIO Zero library and walk through this with me. And you're going to need an Arduino kit. The reason I say an Arduino kit, not a Raspberry Pi kit, is you can get a Raspberry Pi kit, but it's twice as much and you get the same components, only you get a ribbon cable that can go from the GPIO pins to the breadboard. With an Arduino kit, you can get them a lot cheaper with the same or more components, and then just buy ribbon cables separately. So I'll be leaving a link. If you want to get a Raspberry Pi kit, I'll leave a link to the Raspberry Pi kit in the description, but it may not have all the components we're using through this tutorial series. And I'll also leave a link to an Arduino kit. The bonus, you get an Arduino with the Arduino kit. And since we're going to be looking at I2C with the Arduino and Raspberry Pi, definitely go with the Arduino kit if you can. And then just buy a ribbon cable that goes from the breadboard to the Raspberry Pi separately. I will link that in the description as well. So then you'll have your supplies, and the kit will have, here, I'll show you what an average kit has. I'll leave a link to the best one I can find in the description. But if you look here, usually they're fairly expensive. Don't want to get them too cheap, like off websites like AliExpress and such. I'll try to find the cheapest and the best, but not so cheap that it's a crap kit. Let's see here. So you can see you usually get some lights, some resistors, some transistors, some potentiometers, and all this stuff is a great start to robotics, and we'll be using a kit similar to this through the tutorial series. I'll leave a link to the one we'll be using so we can stay on the same page. You aren't going to have my exact kit because mine's an older one that I can't find anymore, but you'll have one very similar to mine, so you should be able to follow through all the tutorial series on the Raspberry Pi GPIO pins. And how to use Thony Python, tutorials on Python. Slightly I'll be walking you through the Python coding, and I'll be walking you through the GPIO Zero library, which allows you to do many functions, build robots, turn on lights, make games with the Raspberry Pi GPIO pins. So you'll be learning all this information with the Raspberry Pi. Now the Raspberry Pi itself, if you do not have one, or you want a Raspberry Pi 4 to go through this tutorial series, any Raspberry Pi with 40 pins and full Raspbian will work. But I would recommend the Raspberry Pi Zero with Wi-Fi if you don't have a lot of money. I would recommend the Raspberry Pi 4 if you know what you're doing, and because you could burn your Raspberry Pi out, so try to get a cheaper one, maybe like a Raspberry Pi Zero. If you're getting a Raspberry Pi 4, you can see mine has a case and some heat sinks. Definitely make sure to get heat sinks with it, otherwise it can get a little bit hot. I would go with the Labith starter kit, and I will leave a link to that in the description. It is a very nice kit. It comes with a case, a fan, heat sinks, a power cable, a good quality power cable, an SD card with noobs installed. It comes with this little SD card to, what's that, USB-C. It comes with 2 HDMI to micro HDMI cables. It comes with the Raspberry Pi itself, and it's only at a low cost of about $100. And the case top has an actual camera attachment. If you want to attach a camera, it also comes with a fan. It's a very nice case. It's the best, in my opinion, the best Raspberry Pi kit. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to get one of those. If you don't have the Raspberry Pi 4, I recommend getting it. It is a beautiful little machine. I'll leave a link to the kit in the description that I'm using through this tutorial series. So basically, you'll learn how to use the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi with Python programming using the GPIO Zero library. I'll also make a separate tutorial series later using Scratch and maybe Linux. But this is the first tutorial series that's coming out, and those ones probably won't be started till later on. And I'll see how this one does. If it does alright, then we'll see. If this tutorial doesn't get too big, it may be ended. So, yeah. That is the start to the Raspberry Pi tutorial series. If you want the kit to all the parts we're going to be using in the series for the robotics and everything, we'll even probably build a mini robot by the end. If you go look in the description for the link to the supplies for building all this stuff. Look in the link for a ribbon cable from the GPIO pins to the breadboard. I'm not going to be using one, but I recommend you do, as it makes things safer. I feel more comfortable not using them. You'll need a Raspberry Pi with full Raspbian installed, and if it's the 4, I would recommend heat sinks, and if it's the 4, I would recommend being careful with these because you can burn your Raspberry Pi out. And that's everything. So, that's everything we're going to be learning, and yep, I will sign out for the first video. The series will be officially started after this video. This is the explanation of what we're going to be doing in this series, and what you'll need, and where to get it. Use the link in the description to use the same pieces I'm using, and the best ones. So, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with the first part of the series.